Hey there YouTube, Travis here, and we're back with the ZA50 Polini Build Maxi. And today we're going to talk about everything that went wrong after the build was completed. Alright, so as a quick recap, if you're new to this bike, this was a ground up build, not a restoration, no paint involved, but certainly a mechanical once over on a Puch Maxi with the ZA50. So the engine got a full rebuild with an aftermarket crank, new shift pucks, obviously Polini 64 kit, 15 Bing, an OEM Bing with a 90 jet, stock points timed at 16 degrees before top dead center, nice expansion chamber on it, originally a Treats Puch pipe, but there's a new pipe on it now and we'll get to that. But other than that, it's still a nice powerful kit. We're not pushing the envelope, in my opinion, in terms of anything risky. We've got the included 2-pedal reeds. We've got a Puch high torque head, actually the original 50cc high torque head that came with this moped, which is pretty cool. And overall, I've been so in love with this bike. The temps stay nice and cool at wide open. I'm getting 350, 360 as a top, which I'm very satisfied with, and it kind of goes back down to 280, 290 at idle. It idles like a tank. It starts first kick, but there were a few hiccups getting to this point, just like any build, especially when you've had to go through so many individual components yourself. So let's talk a little bit more about it. All right, so let's talk about what went wrong first. The inaugural big ride for this bike was a local ride put on by my Moped Club every year. It's called our anniversary ride to celebrate the founding of the club. And the bike performed excellent the day before. I took it on a good, long, 30-minute test ride. Pretty good power, very satisfied with the top speed. But the day of the ride, on my way to the meetup spot, it is acting like it's super rich. It's four-stroking a lot. I'm really struggling to get enough power to shift into second. It's really not performing well at all. And to be honest, I should have just pulled out another moped, but I was so excited to test this thing out. But the more I rode it, the worse things got. I downjetted, I ripped the air filter off, which will help lean the bike out. Unfortunately, it just kind of came to a stop and died. And into the chase truck I went. What a bummer. So I get home and I check ignition timing. And yes, my ignition timing has slipped. It was 10 degrees or slightly lower. And I found that one of my stator screws was backed out. What a silly mistake. You really do have to crank those down. So my timing had slipped. It gave me a false rich condition. It was just running at very low timing, making very low power, and eventually it got so bad that it wouldn't run any further. So that was a bummer, but easily enough rectifiable. So here's the stator that came with the bike, and this is the stator that I was running the day that I had that breakdown. I decided after that whole experience, even though it wasn't the stator itself that was the problem, I was going to use a nice 6-wire Bosch stator that I had sitting on the shelf. I've had it for a couple years. It's really clean. This one's just rusty in general. There is some repairs on it, which I actually like. Someone took the blue-black wire, which goes to the horn, and normally you have to ground that out if you're not running a horn, or if your horn is stuck on and you just want to cut it out. You have to ground it outside on the wiring block, but someone grounded it right to the ground part of this coil right here, so that's kind of neat. But again, in general, it's just very dirty. I'm still a huge advocate for these stators, and you can have some really gnarly looking ones that produce a great spark, but hey, I had this complete all original one on the shelf, so why not pop it in? And that's exactly what I did. And this was great because we had another club ride coming up. This was a prospect in our club who was looking to join. He led a great ride. I rode this moped. It was doing good. The new stator, sparking great. Up until the final 15 minutes of the ride. It rode great for about 3 hours, and then I started losing power. I was like, this thing's gonna shut off soon, and it died, coasted to the side of the road. I initially still suspected an electrical issue. I made sure that the connections for the spark plug wire and boot were good. I really jostled everything around, and if you've got a keen eye, you will see already exactly what was the issue. But before we get into that, the diagnosis for this problem was just absolute pain. This was a club ride, and so I had people standing all around me who, you know, have worked in moped shops, who just like me, like have done a couple of these and you know, should be able to spot the issue. What it ended up being was, you know, I could see the points would break open right at the correct timing mark, but when you put the timing light on it, it was firing like 40 degrees off. It was firing nowhere near it was supposed to, so you'd kick it over and you'd hear a squeak and a pop out the exhaust. That's classic timing problems. But it was just really strange that it wasn't firing when the points were opening. Upon closer inspection, the points, which I actually still have, and those are right here. I'll put some pictures up. I don't know how well it's going to come up on video, but these points were burned up. I've never had that happen before. And the culprit was actually the original condenser right here. I talk about my love of points and how reliable they are, but not having the best luck with them. There are people out there, especially on the internet, some pretty loud people who will say, oh, these factory, you know, condensers that are soldered in, they never fail, and it's just a simple capacitor. That's simply not true. They absolutely can fail. In this case, when I did the old charge it up with the ohms function on the multimeter and then set it to DC volts and put it on both connections. In that case, this one was performing really funky. I could kind of get it to charge up, but the connection wasn't super good. These other two condensers here, they both performed normally. I wired one in a very temporary fashion to test my theory, and then the timing was, you know, once I actually replaced the points with a nice set of new old stock Bosch points. They were like 25 bucks, but very worth it. Brand new points and a nice external condenser. I like to buy these ones from Treats that have the little bracket on it. You can mount them a lot of different places if you don't want to jam them inside the flywheel, which, you know, at this point I don't. So yeah, finally our ignition is sorted, and a couple of my friends were like, hey Travis, why don't you just do a CDI on this thing? And that's absolutely in the future for this bike. However, given those nice new old stock points in there and my nice external condenser, I'm going to enjoy this thing for a while. And get this, to its credit, despite the fact that we're riding a kitted moped, I have not blown a single 6-volt bulb. No voltage regulator installed at all. Headlight, taillight, and brake light, all performing normally. I've got this wired in a factory configuration. Every wire except for the blue-black horn wire, because that is stuck on, so that goes to ground. But everything else, these stators are nicely balanced. And again, I have this geared in such a way where it's not going to do crazy high revs. I think even if I hit 50 miles an hour on this, I'm still barely over 9,000 RPM. So for now, I feel very good about the electrical side of this bike. It starts first kick, but man, I was really being put through the ringer troubleshooting that. So what else? It was around this time when I was doing the external condenser wiring. The bike was here on the stand, and I came up to the rear wheel and I lifted it off the ground, and there's like the most faint amount of play right now, but this was going bang, 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 bang. The tire itself was kind of moving left and right, and I was like, oh my gosh, what is going on now? And I came over and I could see the brake plate was like popped out ever so slightly. And I was like, oh man. I had repacked the wheel bearings front and rear, put a new tube in the rear. The brake pads are new in the rear. I thought that the wheels were set, but unfortunately they weren't. Yes, unfortunately this was another not tightened down enough issue. One of the locking nuts for that butts up against the cone nut for the loose wheel bearings had backed out a little bit. And it was causing the wheel to kind of go, in and out. I could tell when I hit the brake, it would actually kind of stick and then pop back, despite the fact that the brake plate itself was well lubricated, the pivot point and the arm. And it's a brand new old stock Puch rear cable. So I'm hoping that won't slip. It's a nice thick cable. So what ended up being my issue was, it was just moving a little bit, and unfortunately one of the cone nuts was a little chewed up. I didn't have a replacement on hand, and just for now, I lightly sanded it to make it smooth, put it all back together, and now the wheel is doesn't really have much of any play in it. It's ever so faint, which I think is okay. This is on a short list now. It will be getting the sealed bearing conversion for the rear. Whenever you put something together, especially something that's a basket case project, you just have to kind of be ready to take it apart again. Just keep that expectation in mind. All right, so what else? I wouldn't count this as a fail, but initially when I put the bike together, I filled it with classic Type F oil in the transmission. I have graduated running a nice synthetic 10W30. Performance is possibly about the same. It might slip a little bit more and shift slightly later, maybe by a mile or two. It's really not that noticeable. I'm just hoping for gentler wear on the clutch shoes over time. A lot of people have moved on from Type F to the synthetic 30 weight oil. So I put myself in those ranks too, but most everything else, the stock bikes and the more simple builds will still get Type F and change it out regularly. Now the really big elephant in the room here is that this is obviously a Estoril pipe. It's an original Estoril pipe, probably from about 12 years ago. It actually came with this frame and motor. It came as part of this bike. But when I built it originally, we had this much larger chambered Treats Puch pipe. These were popular about 7 or 8 years ago. I think you can still buy the all matte black one. I don't think you can buy this style anymore, but this pipe was great. It's got all of these mounting options and this huge chamber. Unfortunately, it ended up just being a little too much pipe for this build. Yes, it is a Polini, the famed Polini kit. However, I'm just running a simple 15 Bing. We're not doing anything super aggressive with this in terms of reeds. It's the stock reeds. So in this case, I loved when I could get up in the high end of the pipe, when I'd really get into the power band. It was a lot of fun. However, the low end sacrifice, when I would go on group rides, it really was just too much. I would find myself just getting, dusted by basically everybody off the line. So for commuting, I think I could have kept it, but I want to be able to enjoy riding around with my friends. So I actually switched to an Estoril pipe. Actually, first I threw a circuit pipe on here for fun, and that low end punch was awesome. But those are quite loud and a little chintzy. So I went with this nice sturdy Estoril pipe, which I had obviously. And this is considered a low mid-range pipe. This is actually one of the ones that has the cone inside the back. A lot of people call that a restrictor, but from my understanding, it's actually meant to help you out with low end a smidge more. The more modern Estoril side bleed does not have this, and I think for my purposes, this pipe is actually the one that I want and I'm going to keep. The low end is awesome. I actually felt the front end kind of lift up, which is wild when I punched it from a stop sign. So I'm a huge fan. It's possible I lost a few miles an hour off the top, but I am not sweating it at all. Hey, it's worth calling out, if you ever wanted to read a breakdown on different types of Puch exhausts, the blog on the Detroit Moped Works website is a really great resource. They break down the 4 different types of Estoril pipes that are out there. I've got no complaints with this one. I did have to drill a custom mount here, but so far so good. no leaks, and it sounds nice and muted. So yeah, from here on out, I'm basically just doing cosmetic stuff and optional stuff for the bike besides the rear sealed bearing conversion. I'm actually going to rebuild and install this nice 40-mile-an-hour speedometer so that I can actually just look down and not have to use my phone to see how fast I'm going. This is a ZA50, so it came with the 30-mile-an-hour speedometer here with the shift indicator on it. These, from what I've read, you can actually remove the pin right here and it'll continue to read. But I'm going to go for the 40-mile-an-hour one. Yeah, really just cosmetic stuff. I mean, they actually sell a block for the bottom for the switch here to replace that. It's getting a little fuzzy, so I'll pull back. I did that on this one, and the fit was amazing. So we'll get the factory switches both done up and working again. And yeah, I'm looking forward to just riding and enjoying this the rest of the summer. This is kind of a PSA if you're like me and only dabbled in the cheap treats kits in the past, you know, the $100 piston port or the slightly more expensive reed kit, and you're always nervous about going to a bigger kit like a Polini or possibly a Gila kit. Go for it. You know, take your time, do the build correctly, time low in advance, jet rich and go down. There's always going to be hiccups with these builds, always. And if you stick with it, and if you know, walk away from it when you need to and come back when you're refreshed and think about things and post on the internet and get help, you can have a really fun ripper bike. This has been a long-term project, but I'm so excited that it's finally a streetable bike that I can ride on the weekly. Okay there, YouTube. Hope you enjoyed this little update. Until next time.